Good afternoon. We're going to be talking about factoring when a is not 1. So what that means is today in class we talked about x squared plus another number plus a letter, whatever. But there was no number in front of x. Okay, that was an understood 1. But in this section we're going to be talking about when it's not the number 1. This is the flow chart we showed. In the top left, you will see the x method. The middle term goes in the top, a times c goes in the bottom, and that won't change today. This is the flow chart of how to think. When you're factoring, the first thing you look at is the second sign. If it's positive, that means they'll be the same signs, either both positive or both negative. To figure out if they're both positive or both negative, you look at the first sign. If the first sign is positive, that means they're both positive. If the first sign is negative, that means they're both negative. However, if we go back to the beginning, if the second sign is negative, that means they're going to be different signs. So one's a positive and one's a negative. To figure out which one is which, you look at the first sign. If the first sign is positive, then the bigger factor is positive, and the smaller one is negative. If the first sign is negative, that means the bigger factor is negative, and the smaller one is positive. You can always pause and write this down yourself. We're going to do these two examples. All right, so we're looking, we're going to draw our x. The b term goes in the top, and b is negative 2. A times c goes in the bottom, so a is a 1, and c is negative 8. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. So because our second sign is negative, that means they're going to be different. One is going to be positive and one is going to be negative. To figure out which one is which, we look at the first sign. The first sign is negative, which means the bigger sign needs to be negative. Here's why. The second sign tells us whether it's going to be positive or negative because we're trying to multiply to get this bottom number. A positive times a negative makes a negative. A negative times a negative does not make a negative, and neither does a positive times a positive. What we're also trying to do is not only multiply to this number, but we're trying to add up to this number. If the bigger number is negative, we will have a negative outcome. It doesn't match negative 2, but it is much closer to negative 2 than if we did 1 and 8. If we did negative 1 and positive 8, you would have a positive outcome instead of a negative outcome. So, they're going to be different signs, and the bigger one will be negative. So 1 and negative 8, 2 and negative 4, and since 1 minus 8 is negative 7, we look at 2 minus 4, which is negative 2, which does add up to this and does multiply to this. So this set of factors is going to work for us, 2 and negative 4. So our final answer will look like p plus 2 times p minus 4. Our second set, we're going to draw up an x. Our middle term is negative 13. And our a times c, so a is 1, times c is 36, so 36. So keep in mind what our signs will be. Since our second sign is positive, that means they're going to be the same. And since our first sign is negative, that means they're both negative. So same and both negative. Again, reason being, a negative times a negative makes a positive. A negative plus a negative makes a negative. Okay, so we keep going. Minus 2 goes in negative 18 times. Minus 3 goes in negative 12 times. Minus 4, negative 9 times. Minus 6, negative 6 times. So you'd scan through. Minus 1 minus 36 is negative 37, so that's not it. Minus 2 minus 18 is negative 20, that's not it. Minus 3 minus 12 is negative 15, that's not it. Minus 4 minus 9 is negative 13. So this is our factor right here. Minus 4 minus 9. So we write x minus 4 x minus 9. If you were to FOIL both of these, they should get back to the same exact answer. We also learned about dividing out a GCF. So if you look at this, it looks like, okay, we have a, instead of an x, it's an n, but it's the same thing. Okay, we have a number in front of our squared term. Whenever you see a number in front of your squared term, you should first ask, can I divide anything out? Is there a common number that all three are divisible by? And the hint is, yes, there is. Now, we took a quiz on this, and some of you still did not write 2 on the outside. If you don't write 2 on the outside, you're missing a vital piece of the factoring. You'll factor out n squared. 6n divided by 2 is 3n minus 54. So now when we go to do our x method, we take these over here. I underlined it for you. Our b term is now a 3. And our a times c, our a is 1, times c is negative 54, which will be negative 54. So if we look, our second sign is negative. That means we're going to have different signs, and that the bigger one will be positive. So different signs. Bigger one is positive, so we can have a positive outcome. We keep going. Negative 2 goes in 27 times. 3 goes in. Negative 3 goes in 16 times, correct? No. Yep, I'm right. Sorry, it's early in the morning here. 4 does not go in, 5 does not go in, 6 goes in 9 times. 7 doesn't go in, 8 doesn't go in, and we already have a 9. So we stop here. We look for which one will add up to 3, and it's going to be minus 6 and positive 9. So here is what we cannot forget. You remember this 2 earlier? If you didn't see it, remember this 2, we still need to bring it down. And then we write our factors. X, it's an n minus 6, n plus 9. So this would be our final answer. All right, what we didn't learn today was what we call slide divide and bottoms up. If you look at this trinomial means 3 terms, 1, 2, 3. You can't divide out a single number. They're not all divisible by 3, they're not all divisible by 2, they're not all divisible by 5. All 3 of these are actually prime numbers. So we actually start the same way. We put the b term in the top, which would be negative 2, and we put a times c in the bottom. So we're used to a being 1, but it's 3. So 3 times negative 15, and we're doing the same thing we've been doing, okay? This is not the new stuff. Slide is multiplying a times c, okay? So if you want to know what slide, divide, and bottoms up, which you do need to have written down, slide, divide, and bottoms up, we're going to have different signs, and the bigger one will be negative. Okay? So negative 1 and 15, negative 3 and 5. What am I doing? I said the bigger one will be negative, and then I didn't do it. So bigger one is negative because we want a negative outcome. So 1 minus 15 is negative 14, so that's definitely not it. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So this one is our set of factors. So 3 minus 5. So we haven't made it to anywhere new. All right? We'll have p plus 3, p minus 5. And some people would circle their answer, but you haven't done the last part of this phrase, divide and bottoms up. Here is why we need to do this. Foiling is the opposite of factoring. Okay, foiling, opposite of factoring. So if we were to check our answer, we'd do p times p, which is p squared. Is that the same thing as 3p squared? No. So we haven't done the divide. So here's what you do. You divide both numbers by the a term. So divide means divide both numbers by the a term. So divide by 3. In our first set, it will divide 3 divided by 3 is 1. Perfect. In the last one, we're going to have to bottoms up. Okay? So 3 does not go evenly into 5. 5 over 3 can't be reduced. So you take the denominator and you bottoms up. You bring it to the front of that set of parentheses. And this would be your final answer. If you were to FOIL this, it's a lot better because p times 3p will get you 3p squared, like you need it to be. Alright, so again, here we don't have a number that all 3 are divisible by, so we can't divide anything out. We're going to slide, divide, and bottoms up. Okay, we're going to set up our x. Our x is going to be 3. Then we're going to slide. Okay, that's the first set. Slide. 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. Alright, so just looking at our signs, second sign is negative, so that means we're going to have different signs, and the bigger one will be positive because we want a positive outcome. So we're going to have negative 1 times 18. What else we got? Negative 2 times 9, negative 3 times 6, negative 4 doesn't go in, negative 5 doesn't go in, and then we're back at 6. We don't need to write it twice. So of all of these, minus 3 plus 6 is going to be it. Minus 3 plus 6. So we're going to do n minus 3 n plus 6. But we have not done the second half. Because there's a number up here, we have to do slide, divide, and bottoms up. So we're going to divide by our a term. We always divide by our a term. Alright? So then, when we divide, we bottoms up. Okay? So we take what doesn't go in. So 3 and 2. They're not divisible into each other. So we take 2 and bring it to the front. So 2n minus 3. And then 2 does go into 6. So n plus 3. That's our final answer. Alright. So here, if we look, it's slightly different, but it's what we did this afternoon actually. Put your b term up here. If you were to do the slide, what number is in front of b? 1. So you would do 1 times negative 4, which is negative 4. So we're going to have different signs, and the bigger one will be positive. So different signs, bigger one positive. So negative 1 and 4, negative 2 and 2. So only negative 1 and 4. Multiply to negative 4 and add up to positive 3. So if some of you tried to do divide bottoms up, some people ask, when do I do divide bottoms up? Well, you always divide by the a term, which here is 1. What happens when I divide anything by 1? It's the original answer. So if you choose, you can do divide and bottoms up every time. But whenever there's a 1 in front, like this one, you're going to get the same answer that you factored. I believe this is our last one. We're almost there. So most people would start this problem, but I will not. There is a problem with this one, different than any others, and I'm telling you it's this negative. It's the negative, and also each of these are even numbers. So we're going to divide out a negative as well as the number they're all divisible by. And they're all divisible by 2. Remember that when you divide something out, you write it on the outside. And then you have minus 4a squared divided by negative 2, which is 2a squared. Plus 2a divided by negative 2, which would be negative a. And then positive 20 divided by negative 2 is negative 10. Now we can do our x. So we're not doing the x method based on up here. We're doing it based on what's inside of this parentheses. So my b term, it looks like there isn't one, but there is. There's an invisible one right here. So it's a -1. And then a times c. You're going to slide. This is our sliding. 2 times -10 is -20. We're going to find factors of -20 that add up to -1. So start with the fact that they're going to be different signs, and the bigger one will be negative. So 1 and -20, 2 and -10, 3 doesn't go in, 4 goes in -5 times, and then you're back at 5. So these are all the factors, and 4 and -5 will multiply to -20, and add up to -5. So, common mistake, remember to drop down this -2, and then we're going to write in our parentheses, we have a plus 4, and then a minus 5. But don't forget, if you were to FOIL this back out, a times a does not make 2a squared. So we did the slide, we got to divide now. Divide by our a term, which is right here. This 2 is not our a term. The 2 inside in front of our a squared is our a term. And then we're going to end up bottoms up. Bottoms up. Alright, so we're dropping down our -2 again. 2 goes into 4 twice, so a plus 2. 2 does not go into 5, so it's going to bottoms up. 2a minus 5. We'll go over this again tomorrow. Have a great night. Happy Valentine's Day.